Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, looking back at Tyus Jones not playing a minute in the fourth quarter on Friday night. What does that tell us looking forward about the Suns? We'll also follow up on our Kevin Durant role conversation and take a look at the West Coast where a very familiar situation just played out. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this game day Tuesday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button and do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Joining me, as always, from the wonderful West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we feeling on this New Year's Eve, Ben Garcia?
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say New Year's Eve or Happy New Year's Eve to you. Do you have a resolution? Do you usually have one every year?
I don't really do like a big thing, but I'll kind of sit there and be like, I want to do more of this, less of that, you know.
What do you want to do? Have you thought about it? It's today.
I know. No, I got 24 hours. I'm going to let everybody know we're actually recording this on Monday. I don't know if
how
catches
dare
that,
you? Don't do that.
What's
Monday
funny
night.
is when I first started doing that, when we got to YouTube, I would have so many people be like, why are you saying Tuesday? Why, whatever. And then they realize that on YouTube, it goes up at night. On audio, it goes up in the morning. But no, what do you have? What's your resolution?
I've never done a resolution before in my life. I am a perfect human being. I don't have anything else I need to perfect.
There's no need. You're
I know. I think
you're right where you want to be already.
I think for me, I'm so invested. Although maybe some people don't think I'm way too invested in my work in this kind of stuff. So I just want to take more strides in that. That's all I want to do. I just want to work harder because I don't know what else. My wife says I should talk less. I don't know. Maybe it's that.
I don't think the work thing and that can go together. You might have to have a conversation on that one.
No.
All right. So we talked about the Saturday game a little bit more, Ben, on Monday's show where we were looking at the Jusuf Nurkic suspension and obviously Kevin Durant's turnovers and some of that stuff. But on Friday night, we had a situation play out where Tyus Jones, bench sounds aggressive, but he didn't play in the fourth quarter. And he had a pretty poor game, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on, like, how much this whole thing even matters before we even necessarily try to, like, really say what it means. Because he wasn't at his best. Kyrie Irving was kind of cooking him a little bit, and the Suns wanted to match what Dallas does. We've known for years Dallas is a big, versatile team at every position. Basically outside of Kyrie, and I understand wanting to match that, but what did you make of kind of within the whole conversation and everything we've looked at with Tyus throughout the season? Did this feel like a big inflection point or just one of those games where something happens and you flush it down the toilet? Where were you on that spectrum?
Before we even get there, man, it is fascinating to me to see the kind of switch that we're kind of making on Tyus Jones as a Suns community. And it's very small right now, but I want to acknowledge it because it could grow in the future. Tyus Jones, I was just looking at it a second ago, is averaging the most points he's ever averaged and is the most efficient he's ever been. And we're kind of starting to see this, and it always kind of goes to the Maverick side of things, where we're starting to see these people on social media or whatever get upset because of his defense, because he's a smaller guy. And I think that's exactly what it is. Kyrie Irving was cooking him. They were getting no help from the bigs in this game. You had Mason Plumlee trying to cover Daniel Gafford at the three-point line. I don't think this was so much an indictment on Tyus Jones. I think it was they needed to do anything they could to get at all bigger to try to stop from getting so destroyed in the paint in that game. So I think this is just one of those one-off adjustments that you had to make, but I am surprised the turn that because we've undid every stone so far this year of why things have not gone the way we want them to go.
Yeah.
I never thought we would ever get to the stone of Tyus Jones because statistically how well he's played.
Okay, so, but you agree the defense is a concern, right?
Yeah, but I knew that. I just knew that coming into the year. He's not a bad defender. He's actually a pretty smart defender, but he's 6 foot. Like he's not a big guy.
Yeah, what's
so he's
funny
gonna
about
get
that game is Monte actually played in the beginning of the fourth, like his normal rotation. So, that to me, it's like I think that there are times when you can overreact to certain things, but to me, that is Bud telling us Monte Morris is a more trustworthy defender than Tyus Jones. Period. Point blank. That's just a fact. Now, I'm not saying better or worse player, but it's kind of interesting to just see when push comes to shove, kind of what coaches tell us with their decision making, and I think that one was there. But let's kind of go through this, right? So I don't think it was nothing, partially because of the defense. I'm not saying that here's what I mean by that. It doesn't mean expect more fourth quarters where Tyus doesn't play. But it's very similar to what I just said with the Monte thing, where it is Bud telling us that when they are facing a certain type of team or a certain type of player, one possible adjustment to fix that is to take Tyus Jones off the court. We don't have to overreact to that, but I guarantee you there will never be an adjustment in a game where the result is take Kevin Durant off the court, right? Never going to say take Devin Booker off the court. Probably not ever going to say take Bradley Beal off the court. So you just start to get to how valuable and core to this team is Tyus. This tells me he's not immovable from the closing group. He's not immovable from the best players on this team. And maybe there is a little bit of an opening there to reevaluate what should this team look like at the top levels against the best teams when they need to win games. And sometimes that's not going to include Tyus. That doesn't sound like a huge thing, but I kind of think it is because of honestly exactly what you said, which is all of his production is trending very much in the direction you would want it to, and yet he just got benched. Like, Bud knows the numbers you just said, right? Bud knows how good he's been as a scorer, and yet there he was on the bench on Friday. So both things are true, and we kind of have to make sense of why it still happened that way. I have my thoughts, but I guess I'll just throw it back to you and saying I do think this is somewhat big.
Well, then that's something that we have to get used to. If you think that that's true, and we have talked about before that this best version of the Phoenix Suns, you and I are both in an agreement of this, is their small ball lineup, which is a Beal, Booker, KD, Royce, and Dunn in some sort of combination like that. So in close
that's basically
games,
the version of what they closed with in that Mavs game.
And that would make a lot of sense because in these close games, you have 3 shooters on the floor. The only thing I worry about, man, and I think it's something you've seen in the Warriors game where they blew another fourth quarter, the Mavericks game where they weren't very good in that fourth quarter either, where I just worry continuously about the turnovers was this team. And it is Kevin Durant, it is Devin Booker, it is Bradley Beal. They have all done a poor job taking care of the basketball this year. So when you take Tyus Jones out of that lineup, which we've already talked about, they're not really running a lot of this offense around Tyus already. I just find that a big deal. And if you are willing to live with the turnovers, that's fine. To get back some things on the defensive end, that's okay. But I worry about taking Tyus off the floor, even though at this point it was Monte.
And this gets to, well, he's not going to be out there to close games either, right? Like this gets to the exact issue. And just to like establish it, the closing lineup in place of Tyus, just so we say it, was Okogie, Beal, Royce, KD, and Plumlee. Obviously, they don't have Booker, so they can't quite get to some of what you were saying there that we saw maybe early in the season, but that's what they went with instead of Tyus. I agree with you that the turnovers, when you see it, wreck their momentum in these fourth quarters. In both games, about 8-9 minutes in the fourth quarter, they had multiple turnovers in a row that basically just killed their chances. It was like, I mean, literally the same thing played out against Golden State and against Dallas. But the ball's not in Tyus's hands when he's out there a lot of the time anyway. And so that's where I get back to the point you made about his scoring and his efficiency, and kind of the conversation we were talking about a minute ago, a couple weeks ago, when you were saying like, he's just as capable of a third option when he's out there as Beal and some of that stuff. That's not why you have Tyus Jones out there. If your case for keeping him out there is that he's a half decent scorer, you're already so far afoot from what the point of him being on this team is, in my opinion. So that just gets me back to, like, if they're not going to use him as a real point guard when he's out there, and these other limitations are so obvious, I kind of get why this happens, why this type of thing can happen. And it's the same reason all throughout last season I was yelling into the void, the point guard is not going to change everything about this team.
No, it's not.
And we are just seeing it. This is proof of that. Point guard, when he's out there, because he was out there on Saturday, the same mistake still happened. He did play in the fourth quarter Saturday, still turned the ball over, still fell apart. He wasn't out there Friday. Didn't really make a huge difference one way or another. And the defense is always going to be a question mark, which we know because, like you said, he's 6 feet tall. So to me, this is just like kind of establishing exactly why this was never going to be like the Band-Aid that everybody wanted it to be.
That's a really good way of circling back to what it was last year, because you and I were both not a victim to this, where it was point guard, point guard, point guard. Get that, they'll fix everything. And you and I both of this belief that it is point guard isn't really a thing anymore. We call them ball handlers. We don't have positions anymore in the NBA. And you and I both talked about this, where I thought the biggest issue was the wing. I'm not sure if yours was the center of the wing as well. Again, it's irrelevant, but this issue with Tyus Jones, one thing that I had worried about when he showed up to the team was exactly that. He's 6 feet tall, and defensively, he's a smart guy. He gets in passing lanes, but he's going to get bullied. We saw that in the very first game of the season against the Clippers. Harden went right at him over and over and over again. So if teams are going to go after Tyus Jones late in games, you might have to play him off the floor. In fact, you could start having the conversation of, man, if you can't play this guy in crunch time minutes, why did you bring him in anyways? So that's where I would stand on that. It's a really good point, what you had said.
If you're not going to play him crunch time minutes, but especially if when you do, you don't maximize him. That's the most head-scratching part of all of this, is that they did get a point guard, and they don't use him like a point guard. They use him like he's Grayson Allen, and in that case, put Grayson Allen on the court. He's better at it. He's taller. He can make threes at a higher clip, and he's a little stronger and more, juice off the bounce as a result of that. So, but you mentioned the Clippers game, and they were able to win that game because Kevin Durant outplayed James Harden down the stretch. That is another wrinkle as we cycle through the roles, and what you said is exactly right. We are turning over every stone to try to understand what is going on with this team. We very briefly got into KD at the end of the first segment last night, but I wanted to follow up, did some digging when it comes to the numbers, and we're going to deep dive specifically on KD and his spot in all of this coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by RocketRx. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, RocketRx has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Well, RocketRx makes that simple and stress-free. RocketRx offers FDA-approved treatments for ED at a lower cost than branded alternatives, so no more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With RocketRx, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you could get your free prescription today. So visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can also get 40% off your first order when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. That's rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. RocketRx, better sex made simple. Coming back here, reminder to sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter. If you already have, well, then you know some of the numbers I'm about to throw up in when it comes to KD, because I did a lot of this digging last night after the show to try to formulate my argument a little bit deeper. We'll talk about it now, but that's the kind of stuff you get in the newsletter. A little bit of an additional, sometimes just a summary of the show, sometimes some new stuff. You get NBA analysis, NBA news, Suns news, fantasy advice, all of it in one place for free, and best of all, you support the show. Okay, Ben.
I'm excited to hear this, by the way. You stopped me yesterday. So for people that don't know, I do all the, we have roles here. I do all the social media stuff. You do a lot of the other stuff behind the scenes, especially producing the show every night. And you would talk some stuff about Kevin Durant, which is why I'm really excited to hear your points, because you texted me, because you'll see me sometimes take notes of your, oh, this would be good, this would be good. And you had said, hey, I saw you take a note on the Kevin Durant thing. Please wait until I can better articulate that. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
If it was a player who was less active on Twitter, I might have had less of an issue with it. But I got to be ready to face the music when it comes to this gentleman, So
because he's going to see it.
Yeah. So, okay, here's basically the bottom line of what I would say. The things that I think are most concrete, because I went through and I looked at like touches per game, you know, the way he's getting the ball, time of possession, all this sort of stuff, and it's not super different than last year. Okay, like as much as it might feel weird or the turnovers have been rough lately or whatever, it really hasn't. And even when you look at like some of the early season stuff from last year where KD was just having to do everything when KD and Beal, or when Book and Beal were both out, if you think back to the beginning of last season, even if you look at that, a lot of how he's playing and what he's doing is still pretty similar. But here's the craziest part that I want to throw off you just off the bat, Ben. So far this season, usage rate, which is people think it includes assists. It doesn't. I always like to remind people of that. It is shot attempts and its turnovers combined. KD's usage right now would be, if it holds, the highest in a decade. And that includes games where they've been more healthy on the whole this season than last year, right? So this isn't like, oh, he's having to do everything. We would have said that last year. It's not really been the case this year. And especially when you look at December, his usage is something like 34%. Like he just has never had a season that's anything like that. And he just completed a whole month where it was that high. No, it's at 36% in December. I know there's one more game to go. Something is different here where he is going into, hero ball, do it all mode in a way that we never associate this guy with. He's never overdone it and indulged himself like this the way that he has been this month. Why do you think that is, just at the biggest possible level?
Man, if I'm taking a wild guess at this, I think it's that Kevin Durant doesn't believe in the players around him. He's felt the toxicity of Beal being out or Booker being out, and he feels like he has to do it on his own. He sees the statistics just like us. Whenever this team goes down quickly or loses one of their top guys, they're one of the worst teams in the NBA, and he feels like, rightfully so, he's one of the top 10 players of all time, in my opinion, that he has to go into hero ball mode, and it has sunk them. It feels like you even said this, the most since a decade. I would assume the Brooklyn Nets times are when he had a higher usage rate, because guys were out, not the Warriors and not OKC, because those had guys too. But the Nets, it's kind of surprising to me. So if I'm being honest with you, I don't know what it is outside of he just doesn't feel stable without his other guys there, and he doesn't trust Tyus Jones or Grayson Allen to win the games for him.
I don't disagree. The crazy thing is, if I even go back to, again, those early months of last season where he was the only guy also, his usage still never crept up quite as high as it has been recently. And I don't have a better answer than you. I kind of just threw it at you to see what you would say. I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that I know the why of a lot of this, but I just think it's so glaring that it's worth trying to just like put it out there. And maybe, if people have thoughts in the comments, like, go for it. This is an open conversation here. Because the other thing is, like, there is more structure this year too, right? Like last season when Book and Beal would be out, it was just KD ISO after KD post up after, directionless possessions that we could just see. Unless he makes a God level shot, it's going to be nothing. This is not quite the same this year because Bud has a better offense, we all would agree, than Kevin Young and Frank Vogel had. And so that gets me to the other part that I was able to dig up, which was kind of the most like concrete things that I could really find here. So his drives per game, October and November, about 9. Last season, similar, 9. Like, let's just say between 9 and 10 per game. That's pretty good for a dude in his mid-30s who's, pretty high center of gravity and all that. But it's up to 13 in December. On top of that, his assists per game, like we can just go per game on the whole season, I don't know if you've looked at this, would be the lowest since 2012 assists per game. And in December, when the drives have gone up, so have the turnovers, which that one you didn't need me to tell you. Everybody knows that. So he's that all, like, I know it sounds like mumbo jumbo when I'm throwing numbers at you, but that's exactly what we're watching. He's taking off into the teeth of the defense and not creating shots for his team when he does it, right? Like that's kind of where we're at. So,
well, I didn't realize my mic was on there. I was reacting to some of these statistics. Whoa, dude, wow. Sorry. Got to turn my mic off next time. But
No, you're good.
those are
So
astonishing. I have it up on my
that's kind of
computer
where
too.
we're at, is that he is initiating the offense as if it's the same old thing. And in this month, even at a higher level in terms of, from the perimeter, driving the ball, but yet he's assisting less and turning it over more. Like, that is the most concrete evidence that I can come up with that it's not helping. It's not working. And if you just want to go record, they had all the injuries at the beginning of last year. We just talked about all those aimless possessions, and yet they're right here with basically the same record anyway. So it's not even like that he's, had to do it for the team's success, even if it's not pretty. I don't even think you can make that argument with me. So it just has to change.
I understand that it has to change, but I don't know what it is that we do. Like, it's easy to say Kevin Durant pass more, but it feels like this offense hasn't had an identity all year long. Like, it is continuously changed between, hey, we're going to chuck up 3-pointers tonight, to we're not going to chuck up a lot of 3-pointers. What I've noticed is whenever Kevin Durant is in the game, and Bradley Beal has this issue too, we're not just pointing the finger at Bradley Beal, the ball is continuing to stick. This is a little bit of an indictment on Budenholzer not getting in the face of one of these guys, because both of them, even Booker as well, have to protect the basketball more. I just want to know why they're not running the offense through Tyus Jones. It almost feels like they got a point guard just to say that they have a point guard. And other than that, man, we have Nurkic bringing the ball up the court sometimes. I broke out something yesterday from you about the offensive woes. It just looks the same as last year if you take out the first 10 games of the season. I don't know what you do. Telling Kevin Durant to pass more, I don't think is going to fix everything. There are clear other issues. I think another thing that he's taken a step into this year is remember last year, the Dwayne Rankin article that he felt like he's extended his career because he avoided all the crash test dummies. I could tell that Kevin Durant is not avoiding the crash test dummies anymore. Personally, when I watch him go to the rack, but also this is another thing. Offensively, it's gotten a little lazy. If I'm not mistaken, I think over the last 10 games or potentially the entire season, I forgot what the statistic was. Kevin Durant doesn't have an offensive rebound all year long. Like, that's an issue as well that I definitely saw something similar to that, because it was like Okogie had 8 and Kevin Durant had none all year long. But it's starting to become just a little lazy on the offensive end as well.
Here's what's kind of a funny coincidence about this, right? And why it is so alarming, and I have an answer for you. It's not just pass more. I think that it is be an off-ball player.
Mm-hmm.
Because that.
But then you get the issues of last year.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
There's a healthy medium.
Because it's
There's a healthy medium. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, it just comes back to the thing with the point guard. I waited 30 games, but I'm ready to start taking some victory laps here. This team is what we thought it was, right? We knew what this team was. They're proving it to us. They are, as we've seen so far, they're 3 off-ball players at their best, right? The big 3. And yet they don't want to play through Tyus, because the argument goes, well, then you're taking the ball out of the big 3's hands. Okay, well, then one of the 3 of them needs to prove that they can be a primary offensive engine at an elite level to drive a championship offense. They haven't. Booker got 82 games to try it last year. He was the point guard, not Beal, and he didn't do it. KD is kind of trying to do that in the month of December. Not really going so great. We know it's going to be too much for Beal to do. So these questions go kind of hand in hand to me. But the thing I was going to say that's a coincidence about it being the Golden State game. It was the Golden State game last year when I was telling you that I got into that, fight with KD stands. It was after the Golden State game. It was game 2. It was a little premature for me, but it was game 2 of the regular season when he also turned the ball over a million times. Chris Paul was picking his pocket. If you remember, I think he had 8 or 9 turnovers in that game, and they lost because they fell apart in the fourth quarter. And it's been the same ever since. And again, it's the Warriors this time. They're sitting on it. And yeah, he played for that team. Steve Kerr knows him. That's why it happened. But Dennis Schroeder, Jonathan Kuminga, guys who are not elite defenders, they know. Wait for him to take a couple dribbles into the meat of the defense. Tap that ball away. he does not have control, and he does not have the facility and the athleticism to be that type of player anymore. And the best teams that know how to game plan for him tell us that every time he plays them. And that's not an indictment of him. He's an amazing elite Hall of Fame player still, but he can't play this way and expect it to work.
He's also 7 feet tall. It's a long way for that ball to go to the ground. Like, that's why there is a point guard. That's why Steve Nash was so good at getting to the rim. It's hard to get the ball when the ball ain't bouncing up as high as you need it to. That's why you say right there, you just swipe it away. That is easy YMCA stuff that you're doing with guys that you're playing against over there. But I agree with you, man. I don't think the Kevin Durant stands are going to let you off so easy, though. But I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you on everything that you've said.
Well, I brought facts and figures this time, so I was more ready to go to battle here this time.
The issue is I keep seeing the stuff on social media of 50, 40, 90, which isn't even true. He's not averaging 90% from the free throw line, but whatever. They're like 50, 40, 90. I'm like, okay, why does it feel so empty at times? Like, I know Kevin Durant is awesome, and for the first 10 games of the season, he was miraculous. But recently, it feels like there's more meat on the bone with KD, and I feel like that's where it is with the turnovers, maybe, but it sucks because
it's not like a fun conversation to have, but it's the reality of the team right now, right?
I think I just keep on coming back to this team just doesn't fit very well, but that's not new news.
I mean, that's
it's
what
not
we're
new
circling.
news.
All right, let's talk about one other element of that fit in conversations that happened in Sacramento that could parallel ones that at least one of the people on this podcast is pretty convinced need to happen here. First, today's show brought to you by Rocket Money. Did anything in 2024 sneak up on you expense-wise? A lot of the time, that is subscriptions that you forgot about, ones that you wanted to watch this TV show, or maybe you wanted to get this delivery thing, and then you just do it once or twice and you forget, or they keep charging you even though they're not supposed to, and you don't call when you know you should have. Rocket Money takes care of all of that. It's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, and Rocket Money has over 5 million users who have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saved their spending habits, and reached their goals. Up to $740 a year saved when you take advantage of all the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions now and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. For me, it's always I'm throwing money at people to support. I'm in the media. I want to say, okay, you're doing a cool thing. Let me give you that. Oh, crap. I didn't realize that was monthly. That's mine. For you, it might be something else. Either way, go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, Ben, I have yammered plenty on this show. I did too much research for this episode. You had a little bit of a parallel to the Kings firing Mike Brown that reminded you of something familiar when it comes to the Suns. Tell the people what it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw this. Did you see this news before I told it to you?
I did. It was from FanDuel TV by Lou Williams, of all people.
Yeah, so Lou Williams is kind of doing his best Shams Charania impression, trying to break a story here, but he's a player. I'm sure he's got ties to these guys. I don't know if he's ever played with DeRozan before, but he said he was hearing whispers that there was a situation where Mike Brown might have asked DeMar DeRozan to come off the bench, and that rubbed potentially DeMar DeRozan the wrong way, or it didn't come off as good as it wanted to, and it was a clear in his mind, or what he had said, misstep, and Mike Brown was a casualty in that. If this team doesn't fit, here's the parallel here. If you're asking DeMar DeRozan to go to the bench, and listen, I have never pegged DeMar DeRozan of being a diva type player. It feels like to me he's a very quiet player. Never heard him say he wants out of Chicago.
Like a super good dude.
Yeah, we think that same way with Bradley Beal. I almost wonder if the reason the Suns are not having a conversation or talking to Bradley Beal about this, and it seems like to me maybe they've never had that conversation about potentially him coming off the bench. I never thought asking a player to come off the bench like potentially DeMar DeRozan was doing, that it could cause that much of a ruckus in a locker room and a culture with chemistry, that it could ultimately be not the main reason, but a reason why a coach gets fired. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that there's a potential that's why that button will never happen? Sending Beal, sending Tyus, whoever it is you want to send to the bench, Kevin Durant, jokingly, to the bench. Like, could Could you really piss off a player that much?
I mean, I think you could, but what's interesting to me about this is the response from De'Aaron Fox on Twitter, where the specific wording of what he said was, there was never any pushback about anything. This narrative of us butting heads or me going to management saying anything is BS, so you can run with that if you want to. That's not exactly what Lou Williams was saying. So it felt like this weird kind of sidestep to say, like, I didn't cause this, but like what you're saying about DeMar, I'm not going to address specifically, you know? So it seems like it probably did happen. I don't think it's crazy. I guess you could say that because he's only been a King for half a season, it's a little shocking that he would be the guy that would be asked to sacrifice, and that would impact the other players who may not have a relationship with. It's not like he asked De'Aaron Fox to go to the bench, right? Like, that would be, I could get it. Like, okay, well, that's your best player. You can't ask him to. But DeMar, it is a little surprising because he's a new addition and he's an older guy and he, whatever. But I mean, in general, yeah, that was kind of my take from the beginning on the idea of Beal going to the bench. Is I always said, okay, fine. If you think that you could make a reasonable case to me that could help some things, good luck being the one to have that conversation. And that's what I've said for months. So it doesn't shock me that it could be pretty impactful. Well, I guess the question is, would it be the same with Beal and the Suns as it was with the Kings? Because the Kings had a lot of other issues, I think we know, right? Like, they didn't even want to give Brown an extension. Yeah. They missed the playoffs last year. So, like you said, this was kind of the cherry on top. Maybe the Suns have a little more, I guess, like bandwidth to work off of, that maybe Bud could get away with it. I don't know.
Well, maybe and this is kind of what I was thinking when I saw it today. And I was like, maybe the Suns are truly waiting for this to get horribly bad. 5 games under 500. There's nothing else you can do besides go to Bradley Beal, because if you go to him and he doesn't take it well and your team is already spiraling anyways, you're 5 games under 500, things aren't going well. If he blows it up even further, who cares? The team wasn't doing well, but you don't want to do it in a 15-15, 500 record. I actually think they might be under 500 now with the loss of the Warriors.
Like 13-18 or something like that.
So they're
so
whatever.
Talking about the Suns. Sorry, I thought
the
you were
Suns.
saying the Kings. Yeah,
the Suns. But at this point, if you go to that as well, you could derail things that you think right now could be fixed. So it's just something to keep in the back of everyone's mind, where I know there's this idea of being a starter and a bench player, and one's so much better than the other in the NBA, but I can't believe someone like DeRozan potentially added another factor that ultimately made, in Lou Williams' words, a casualty to Mike Brown. That was really shocking to me, and it just made me think right away, oh man, this could get really bad with Brad Beal if you asked him. He seems like a great guy.
Well, here's the thing, and like it's kind of, I guess, the distinction, right? Is it that DeRozan responded poorly, or that the coach had just lost the trust of the other players to the extent that he just didn't have the gravitas anymore to even put that out there, right? Like, I kind of don't think DeRozan threw a fit about this. That would shock me. To your point, he's a pretty mild-mannered and well-respected guy. I doubt that he's having a tantrum about it, but maybe, a Malik Monk, a De'Aaron Fox, a Domantas Sabonis was like, hold on. You just asked that dude to do that? You're the problem, Mike, not him. You know what I mean? It could get like that. Mm-hmm. But, to piggyback off of another thing you said, they're in a 6-game losing streak. And within that 6-game losing streak, DeRozan had a 7 of 18 game, 4 of 13, 4 of 10, 1 of 7. Like, he was struggling and the team was struggling, assuming that request was recent from Mike Brown to put him on the bench. That's where we would probably have to get, like you're saying, to get to a point where Bud could have the kind of courage to go and do that. Because the point I keep bringing every time we talk about this is Beal's not playing badly right now. So that would be an extra gut punch, right? Hey, Brad, thanks for your performance while Book's been out. Here's your reward for it. Hit the hay, like, or hit the hardwood, whatever you want to. Like, that's the problem here, is you kind of have to wait for that right moment. Otherwise, it's going to go over badly, I think.
It at least showed me that clearly, although I want it to happen, the Suns don't see it as the right time. Like, I just was another factor where I was like, oh my goodness, it's just surprising to me that would even get out, because stories get out if people want it out. Lou Williams didn't make up that story. He's probably friends with DeMar DeRozan, heard it through back channels. Something of that was true, and that does worry me, but just interesting.
Absolutely. Very, I guess don't cry for a West team falling. That
Hey,
in some
and
ways, some good news for the Suns, but
pretty much every other team that we
cautionary
talked about
tale.
today has beaten the Suns. The Warriors, the Kings, they've both beaten us. I mean, listen.
Yeah, I guess that's true. The Kings, one team they have had success against this year would be our Phoenix Suns. So there you go.
The Suns have
All
become
right.
everyone else's get-right game, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, the Mavs were on a losing streak without Luka. The Nuggets were on a back-to-back on Monday before, obviously Christmas. There's been far too many of those. The Pelicans, of course, being a big one. Let's hope the absolutely depleted Memphis Grizzlies are not the latest team to do that. But we will have a recap for you guys of that game on Tuesday night. It may be Ben Solo, I believe, but that's all right. We'll have more conversation about what happens to close out the week as you guys enjoy the holidays. So please just do that and focus less on the hoops. Let us be your half hour of hoops and then go back to your regular life. That's kind of the healthy thing to do right now. Happy New Year early to everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.